patrons and subscribers, welcome back to the new show. My name's Random Rob, and today I'm going to be talking about Joss Whedon's 2003 canceled classic sci-fi TV series, Firefly. And the first thing I really need to say about Firefly, if you are a regular viewer on the new show and you have not watched Firefly, turn this video off and go watch it. It's a wonderful TV show. As for the rest of you, I'm going to tell you 5 things you need to know about this unique and wonderful short-lived TV series. And I'm gonna opine a little about the legacy of the show and even a hot take or two. So let's get into it. Firefly was a television show that was essentially doomed for cancellation from the moment it went on the air. It was put into the troubled Friday night rotation on Fox, known as the Death Slot. The reason it's called that is because Fox has over the years canceled over 30 television shows that have aired on Friday night. And despite what you may have heard, Firefly's cancellation had a little less to do with ratings and a little more to do with the fact that Fox did not like the show's tone. They thought it was too dark. The horror elements in it bothered them. Some of the sexuality in the show bothered them. Apparently, some of the executives were pissed that Zoe and Wash were married. They were irritated that Zoe couldn't be a love interest for the captain. A little trivia, Joss Whedon had originally written the character of Malcolm Reynolds for Nicholas Brendon, who had played Xander on Buffy. Kind of breaks my brain to imagine him playing the role of Malcolm Reynolds. The show was originally going to be an ensemble for 5 characters, but in the writing process it turned into 9. Whedon had said that he wanted the theme of the show to be about 9 different characters looking into the void of space and seeing different things. My experience with Firefly was hearing from a friend who knew that I was into Cowboy Bebop, that there was this Western sci-fi show on Fox and that I should check it out. By the time I did, of course, it was already off the air. So, like I suspect is the case with many other people, I saw the movie Serenity first and then picked up the show later on DVD. When I finally watched Firefly, I felt so bad about not supporting it that one Christmas I remember the series was on sale and I think I bought 4 or 5 copies of it and gave it to co-workers and friends who hadn't seen it. Aside from the feature film Serenity, Firefly would also inspire several board games, a role-playing game, a comic book series, and a Firefly reboot was announced by Netflix in 2018, but nothing ever came of it. So, is Firefly a lost cause, or was it fitting that it ended where it did? Let's find out. Here are my 5 things. Number 1, what if it hadn't been canceled? While there's no way to know what a completed second season of Firefly would have looked like, there were a number of storylines that the writers and actors have spoken about since the show's cancellation. One episode would have featured the crew of Serenity setting down on a planet where a lost colony of humans were desperately trying to escape. They try to steal the ship, the crew stops them, and then have to have a vote about whether or not to take the survivors on board. The problem being, if they take the refugees and they don't encounter another ship by the time they reach the next planet, that they would run out of food and fuel, and everyone would die. And the episode was going to end with Malcolm taking the decision away from everyone, taking off in the middle of the night before the crew can stop him, discovering later that they would have encountered no ships on their route and that they all would have died. Another episode was going to have to do with Jane being exposed to some artificial pheromone that attracts these feral dog creatures that are used for dog fighting, and that they end up getting psychically domesticated by River. There was a several episode plot line about Jane going off on his own in his own ship and trying to compete with Mal, but encountering multiple setbacks and eventually realizing he has to return to Serenity and coming to terms with the fact that he's not captain material. There was going to be an episode about a traveling Shakespeare troupe coming aboard Serenity, and would have featured recurring actors from Whedon's other shows. Aside from the story of River's true purpose, there was also going to be a storyline about Inara having a terminal illness. There was also going to be an episode where Inara used her syringe, which we see for a moment in the pilot episode. The syringe, interestingly, was not a suicide kit, but was actually supposed to be a highly selective drug that would kill any person who had raped Inara. This is why she was thinking about using it on herself during the Reaver attack. Whedon originally planned for Firefly to run 7 seasons, and the 34 Tori system that Firefly takes place in, with its multiple suns and protostars and asteroid belts and dozens of planets and moons, was certainly a big enough sandbox for that kind of writing project. But there's something I believe in that I call the 3-season rule. And the 3-season rule is this: television shows that start out shaky but manage to get another season usually hit their best writing in the 3rd season. Conversely, shows that start out with strong writing usually start to go to hell in the 3rd season. And I think if Firefly had kept going on Fox, sooner or later they would have eventually had to start making concessions in the writing to please the network, which I think would have ruined the show. I think if Joss Whedon had kept making Firefly, he eventually would have jumped the shark with it. Think of how the characters and storylines in Buffy got twisted by the end season of that show. I mean, it was nearly unrecognizable from what it started as. So I think Firefly might have had a good 2nd season, but beyond that, I don't know. There's the other set of issues too, is what everybody was doing in between. If Joss Whedon had continued to do Firefly, he wouldn't have done the Avengers. He wouldn't have been able to help write the X-Men comics. There wouldn't have been a Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Nathan Fillion wouldn't have landed Castle, which was definitely a good deal for him. And something else that's important is that the cancellation of Firefly taught television executives that just because your nightly viewership ratings weren't through the roof didn't mean there weren't people out there who were very passionate about what you were doing. This is in fact why when Fox released Joss Whedon's show Dollhouse, when its 1st season didn't do as well as they hoped, they still renewed it for a 2nd season. Because they did not want to deal with another Firefly situation. The truth is, a lot of good ended up coming out of Firefly being canceled the way it was. And the best part is we're left with a TV series that doesn't really have any cringeworthy episodes. There's something to be said for that. Number 2, Serenity is a better teaser than a conclusion. As I mentioned earlier, Serenity was a movie I saw before I actually watched Firefly. I thought it was a very entertaining movie. I liked the universe. Just as a general rule, when you cast Chiwetel Ejiofor as a villain, I am down. He's one of my favorite actors. But I did notice the more I rewatched Firefly, the less I liked Serenity as a movie. I didn't like the cheap deaths of Shepherd Book or Wash. I thought Wash's death was pretty obnoxious. And the biggest problem in it for me was the retconning of the relationship between Mal and Simon, who by episode 14 of Firefly have come to terms with one another and aren't getting into fistfights anymore, and then it just seemed like they dialed all that back. And the retconning of River's safe word. I also thought the origin of the Reavers felt a little contrived. I'm not sure how the Alliance was just going to hide a half a dozen planets that were overrun by these insane feral humans. So no, I was not really happy at all after I watched Firefly with the way that the Serenity movie wrapped everything up, and I really think as a movie it serves a better function getting people interested in Firefly. Number 3, the Tams Are Creepy. And I bring this up with regards to Andy Lama, a fellow I used to talk to on a music forum, who pointed this out to me, but I really had to watch the show a couple of times through to really get it. I don't have a problem with Simon and River Tam individually, but I find that their relationship on the show is more than a little creepy. Mostly seems to consist of River having some problem and having a meltdown, and Simon having to shoot her up with drugs and hug her. It gets old fast. The incestuous subtext is unavoidable. To me, it's literally the only thing in the series that I think brings it down at times. Also, I just never saw Simon and Kaylee getting together. But that's me. Number 4, my favorite episodes. My favorite episode of Firefly is The Message, written by Jose Molina, who I was lucky enough through some circumstances once to chat very briefly with on Facebook, and I complimented him on this episode. I love the irony in The Message. It's the episode where the crew of the show were made aware that they were being canceled. And despite the darkness and sadness of the storyline, it still has that earthy, gritty warmth to it that, to me, is the hallmark of the show. The reminder that life is messy. I love the episode Ariel, where they plan the heist of drugs from the hospital and get interrupted by the sinister agents of the Blue Sun Corporation. I love how the episode has all these great comic touches, but then turns into like downright horror by the end, when the men from Blue Sun are melting people's brains with their little pen device. I love the episodes with Christina Hendricks as Saffron, our Mrs. Reynolds, and Trash. She's a wonderful villain. I wish they could have brought her back again. And of course Shindig, where Mal has to take Kaylee to a ball on Persephone and ends up getting into an unplanned duel to the death with a nobleman. It's just a very funny, charming episode. I love the scene where Inara is trying to help Mal learn to sword fight. I really love all the episodes of this show, by the way, but these are my special favorites. And number 5, where is the Rockstar video game? Seriously, to me this would seem to be a no-brainer. You've got a popular board game, you've got a popular RPG. I mean, there's a handful of Firefly games out, but no video game. I would take the crew that's been working on the Red Dead Redemption games and give them Firefly. Give me a sprawling RPG set on 10 different worlds in the verse with some branching missions and returning characters. You could get everybody to come back and do the voice acting for it, except of course Ron Glass, who passed away in 2016. I mean, who wouldn't want to play a AAA game version of Firefly? I mean, I would much rather prefer that to a second season of the show. And I think Rockstar would be the perfect company to do it, and I just don't know why that's not a thing. It needs to be a thing. So, in conclusion, I heartily recommend Firefly to anyone who hasn't seen it. It was a wonderful blend of East meets West, space opera, adventure, with a distinctive Western Civil War flavor to it. The show only won 1 Emmy for special effects, and I think they were definitely deserved. One thing I especially love about the visual effects in Firefly was how they did not go for beauty shots of the models they were using, but always tried to convey a more realistic documentary feel, not lining up shots perfectly. None of the CG they used in Firefly had any of that, hey, look at me, overdone quality to it. It all seemed rough and real and fit perfectly with the look and feel of the show. And while I'm a little sad that the series didn't get to continue, I think it's best that it didn't. It allows Firefly to exist in this sort of hopeful, perfect state that didn't get screwed up through corporate pressure or compromise. And I also think there's plenty of room in the verse that Whedon created to spin off a new series or a AAA video game. Please. So what did you think of Firefly? Did you like Serenity less after you watched the show? Did you watch the show first? Did you like how they ended it? And are you happy with how things turned out? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you heard, hit the like button and subscribe. And consider becoming a patron of the new show. I could use your help. Alright, this is Random Rob for the new show, signing off. Be excellent, and take care. The new show is made possible by generous support from viewers like Tony, Arnow, Skipnick, Christopher, Marion, Eric, and B. Thank you so much for your support.